Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down round the campfire for this short rest with me and my friend Captain RoBear. Beer, 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 beer. How's it going?
Morning in good time zones, folks.
Yeah, my good time zones. I like that. Good time zones, everybody. Oh boy, am I struggling with time zones at the moment. Just got back from Gen Con, so I crossed the date line on the way there, crossed the date line on the way back. Yeah.
I am so
in Indianapolis times, trying to like get up to make myself like awake at the right times, but like 10 o'clock in the morning for like panel times was like 2 in the morning New Zealand time, so I was having to really do a quick shift.
It's brutal. We had GCX and our live show at the same time this year, and it was horrible because Gen Con is the one convention I'm able to just drive to, and I don't have to make like this elaborate production to go to either coast of the United States. And I'm like, why do we have to overlap dates in 2023?
Getting
Gen Con's the same almost every year.
I
hope you had a fantastic first Gen Con.
I really did. Yeah, it was incredible. Like, despite all of the travel problems, I was talking about it yesterday. But like, I had 3 flights to get out there. That was over 30 hours of travel combined. Because I have to first fly Australia to Sydney, which is at least like a 3-hour flight, sometimes 4-hour flight. And then I had to fly from Sydney across the Pacific Ocean to LA, and that's like a 14-hour flight. And then from LA to Indianapolis. And each one of them was late because of various different reasons. And so each one made my connection late. So I had to get rebooked onto 2 different flights and run around. Like when I arrived in LA, I needed to print my boarding pass. And it took me running from the terminal I arrived at to all the way across to Terminal 5 to get it printed out, which is a half-mile run. So and I had 40 minutes between arriving. I had 40 minutes between arriving and my next flight boarding, and I had to go through check-in and get all my bags and customs and stuff. So I ran a half-mile to get my boarding pass, ran a half-mile back. Only just made it to my next one. It was a whole ordeal. But despite all of that,
I don't think I could, in frame of mind, even check a bag moving that many places. Like, I would just assume it's just not gonna get there.
It's not gonna get
mail my.
especially with me flying American Airlines. Everybody was like, when I told everybody I was flying American, they were like, make sure you don't pack anything you're not willing to lose.
100%. I've been a carry-on only guy, and I live in the middle of the country, so it's almost every flight for me is 3.5 hours, pretty much either way when we're going, and I still don't trust it.
Anyway, so welcome, RoBear. It's wonderful to have you here.
Good to be reunited. It's been a couple of years.
It's been a while now, hasn't it? It's been a while since we've been in the same stream at the same time. So I like to start my short rests with sort of setting up why we're on a short rest in the first place. Are we on some kind of a mission? Are we on a quest? Are we on like a big epic quest or just a small side quest? What are we doing?
We are an epic quest right now that blends reality and fantasy together.
The best type.
And that quest is called Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh,
the greatest
right, yeah.
moment since 5th edition and Critical Role. There has never been this many people talking about D&D
getting into it, right?
Since those 2 waves.
I have bought and downloaded the 100+ gigabyte game, and I've got it on my shortlist, and I'm like, I'm hankering to play it. I can't believe they released it during Gen Con when all of the nerds are going to be too busy to play it.
It was awful.
Why are you releasing it at this time? Release it a week later when the nerds are all free. Anyway, I've had it on my list to play for ages, but as soon as I got back from Gen Con, not only was I getting over jet lag, I had the con crud, so I'm only just feeling okay again now. I have writing because I've got the Viva La Dirt League D&D stuff on Monday coming up. I've got to write for that. I'm writing some recap episodes to do for the channel as well, so I've had all that writing to do. I've had unboxing videos and like thank you videos to people that I met during Gen Con. I've had reaching out. I've not been able to do Baldur's Gate, and I was like, I had like a couple of hours on Monday, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll start it. And then a friend of mine went, no. If you have other stuff to do this week, don't start playing it.
Don't do it.
And
I've been going to sleep at 7 in the morning, U.S. Central Time, because of Baldur's Gate, and it's an issue.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we're having
so
a short rest from Baldur's Gate 3. It seems I'm having a short rest from the hankering I've got. I'm jonesing to even play it. I haven't even started playing it yet, and I'm avoiding all the spoilers about it and everything. With varying degrees of difficulty.
Yeah, that's the hard part. And all of my friends plus content creators are all at different points.
Yeah.
So no one really knows who can talk to each other.
Nobody can talk. Are you at the? And you gotta kind of gauge it by being like, have you done the thing with the big item? You'll know what I mean if you know what I mean. Yeah. You have to do all this.
It's exciting to see people that pumped about it. For me, this is like a Diablo 2 kind of moment, and you can tell by the reviews. PC Gamer, it's been 16 years since a game has received a 97 on just on their scoring. So I mean, critics be damned, and where you put your weight and all that, it really is showing it's one of those breakaway, big, impactful game moments. Wow. And it's exciting that it's in our field. It's our hobby.
Yeah.
It's showing the best of us.
What I'm most excited for is the people saying like it feels like you're playing D&D, like it feels like an actual D&D game rather than like D&D-esque or D&D world, but with video game mechanics and stuff. So I'm excited for that. Yeah. I'm also excited for the character creation because apparently you can get really in depth with it. One of my mods sent me one of the only spoilers I've had for the game so far because she was like, "Hey, I know you're avoiding spoilers, but for the sake of like streaming on Twitch and not getting demonetized or taken down or anything, there is nudity in character creation. You can choose from like 4 different penis types or 4 different vulva types or something." I'm like, what? How detailed do you need for character creation? Apparently that's the game.
It's so good. You can literally use it for your own custom tokens.
For your
BTT games.
Right.
Which is fantastic. We're doing it for one of ours that's
you can make a character and then you can export that character into
just
other
screenshot
programs?
it.
Screenshot it for your VTTs, yeah.
And there's a phenomenal mod that's out by a creator that does. I mean, that's all they do is photo modes. Wow. I have not touched it yet. His name is Frank, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but it's absolutely stunning, the images that you can pull from it. So like me, all I've done is just screenshot and then background removed and created a token with it. But like there's a phenomenal way of exporting. But I'm super excited for that because you can really make a good looking custom character without
you get that when you're playing the game, don't you? That some of your players are like they're super artistic minded and they're like, I really want to make a drawing or a 3D rendering of what my character looks like in my head, so everybody else knows what my character actually is. And if now they've got a tool that it's like, you just need to buy Baldur's Gate 3.
It's a great bridge step between commissioning, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because most people don't have the that's not a resource that's available to someone's table game, sitting down and getting an artist commission. So I'm happy that people are able to get closer to their mind's eye on what they want to, and especially the Dragonborn. Oh man, did they go all out for good-looking Dragonborn? Especially, we love Solasta. Like, we love the game. Yeah. It's great. Their Dragonborn are the derpiest creatures possible. But, we don't care because we're like, hey, we're just excited that they included the race to begin with, and you can play with it, and it's fun. But these are stunning. Like, they're very cool.
All right, so the video game developers of the D&D world have sent us on a quest to play Baldur's Gate 3, and we're on a short rest from that at the moment. Yes. I like to actually start with names. Like so tell us about the name that's beneath you on the Honored screen right now. Where's Captain RoBear actually come from?
I know, and it's so funny. I don't have the hat with me, which is
he doesn't have the captain hat.
I'm wearing all the time. They're actually, because I just got done with GCX convention on my side. They're all right now sitting in a wash tub.
Oh right, they're clean up.
I have.
You need to clean everybody. You got 5 captain hats.
I have 5 of them currently. I'm on 9.0 and above on hats. So,
Oh,
and I've been
wow.
doing this for a very, very long time. So this goes back, it's pushing to almost 2 decades now. It's about 17, 18
Jeez,
years.
man.
And I wore this hat at a bachelor party in New Orleans a very long time ago for a dear friend of mine. And they all convinced me after the bachelor party that I needed to wear the captain's hat to the wedding. And I was like, of course I will be the captain at the wedding. Well, I kept meeting as a young adult influential other business people in my area and individuals, and it was always, hey, it's Captain Rob, it's Captain RoBear, it's Captain Ro. And I was in the bar business. So these people would come and they would come to my tavern and they'd be like, hey, where's the captain at?
Okay.
So eventually it just merged with
It
me.
just
And I
merged.
live on the Mississippi River. So like it's not strange. Like we're freshwater boating people. Like we're at the very bottom of Mississippi in the middle of the United States. It's kind of like the Mississippi River Delta. So there's
Right,
a lot
yeah.
of there's a lot of freshwater lakes. Like I go to Kentucky Lake on the weekends. Like we got a nice little cabin that's on the lake, and we go out there, and I'm on the pontoon, whatnot. So like I
Yeah.
am the stereotype. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wear
actually
fishing
a
shirts
captain.
every day.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just a natural stereotype that's fallen in. So I've had that way before I was put on the internet, and you know
Yeah.
I got here basically because of COVID. COVID ended my tavern career
Right.
because it essentially shut. You know, we were in my area. We were a small college town in between St. Louis and Memphis. So when college went remote and everything got shut down, we lost over 45% of our market overnight.
Jeez.
And I was like, that's not sustainable.
I can't do this. Yeah.
this is yeah. I'm not. I was like, I'm
Pivot.
not doing this.
Gotta pivot very quick.
Pivot. So I shut down that night, and I had a I had a D&D game in the basement of my tavern. I was lucky enough to have been a member that went to Gen Con, and I went to GCX when it was just Guardian Con. So I knew some people that did this content creation as a full time, and I was able to be like, hey, show me the economics on this real quick. How does this
Yeah.
work? I'm like, oh, okay. It's a giant pie, and we're funneling little pieces all to make the pie. Okay, I've done that before. This is just a small business in a different degree. So
Yeah.
lo and behold, like everybody else, I didn't get to stream D&D full time when I first started. I was doing the Sea of Thieves. You did whatever you could to
did
get
whatever you could,
attention.
yeah.
Whatever you can do to show off your personality, and then you have your one D&D game a week, and you're
Yeah.
like, please come
Yeah.
to my one D&D
Yeah.
game, please.
Yeah.
And then I was able to spread myself out there, and now that's luckily all I get to focus on is D&D or stuff that my D&D audience and the D&D audience and wider will enjoy, like Baldur's Gate, CRPGs,
Yeah.
turn-based stuff.
Yeah, likewise.
Whatever
I used to just be like,
our
I-
hobby's interested.
Yeah, I used to be like, oh, do a D&D online, and then I'm like, I do TTRPG related things online. Maybe I'm reading. Like
Exactly.
sometimes I'll just be like recently I did a stream where I was reading this City of Thieves Choose Your Own Adventure book, and it's like, yeah, that's related. It's a fantasy world.
Yes.
I'm doing a D&D related thing.
Choose Your Own Adventure is man, that's how I got Choose Your Own Adventure is how I got into this. Like
yeah,
as a
it's so
kid.
good, right? Yeah, suddenly you're like, oh, I've got options. I can make this. I can decide which direction to go. It's how it's how I used to describe D&D to people when they had no idea what I was getting into. I was like, imagine a choose your own adventure book, but you've got infinite options. Whatever you can think of, there's a page you can turn to where that happens. Yeah.
The original save scumming, man. Your bookmark and like, no, I died.
Go back. Okay. I used to remember like reading through them, but I'd have my fingers in each page where I'd go, and I'd be like, "Where did I?" Yeah, the old Goosebumps
That
books.
brings back such good memories.
So you were
man.
so the hat is where the captain came from, but you were a RoBear before that. People were referring to you as RoBear.
Yeah, so my first
you're a
name's,
Robert, yeah?
Yeah, my first name's Robert. So we're in the old Louisiana Purchase territory here. So
Yeah.
you'll get
Lots of French
my town
pronunciations
is
of it,
Cape
yeah.
Girardeau. So you'll
Yeah.
get I've
Robert.
been little RoBear for my whole life. So and
Yeah,
it mixes with bear because I'm a huge dude.
'Cause you're
So
big guy,
that's
yeah.
why I rock the
How
Witcher
tall are
bear
you?
pendant and 6'2".
6'2". Yeah, big dude. I'm just under 6, but I'm with the Viva guys quite a lot, and they range from 6'4" to about 6 foot. So yeah, I'm used to being around tall fellas. Yeah, as a fellow Robert, I've had a lot of nicknames in my life. RoBear being one of them, but only from my Swiss friends who pronounced it in the French way. RoBear, RoBear. I'd get a lot of like my. It's always funny as well because with Robert's such a nicknameable name that you get all of the names that could start with an R, like Rob and Robbie and Robster, and then you get all of those again with B. Bob and Bobby and Bobs, and so so I've got like specific nicknames that are tied to specific people now. Like I've got a friend who calls me Bert, and if anybody calls me Bert, I know it's him because he's the only one that does it. And like my mum always calls me Robbie, so I know it's Robbie or Robbie Doo from her. And if it's Bob, then it's probably my brother, one of my brothers. And it's like everybody's picked their one that they like to they latch onto.
Yeah. It is one. It is separated like that. Like you end up having a bunch of names.
It's one of the things I like about Robert. It's like it's a common enough name that people know what it is, and you don't have to spell it to everybody every time you're trying to put it on a form or whatever, or trying to say it over the phone. Like people don't go, "What? What's that name?" But also, it's uncommon. It's uncommon enough, especially with all the different variations, that you're not finding a million different Roberts. And when you do find another Robert, they're quite often a Bob or a Robbie or something, and so you can kind of differentiate.
Everybody goes
easily.
by something different.
Yeah, it's
100%.
not like 1,000 different Michaels in every classroom. So, how did you first get into D&D? You say through like choose your own adventure books and stuff. You were always into like fantasy and stories and things. Were you telling stories as a kid? Were you had a vivid imagination?
That's definitely part of the DNA. Running around outside, you're always going on a quest.
Yeah.
I got to think it's probably early Conan the Barbarian, early comic shop, early like USA arcade life,
right, yeah.
Going in it like that stuff all just starts kind of popping off because I'm a child of 84, so like 1992 X-Men drops on Saturday mornings for us. So you're getting a high dose of like really cool fantasy, and then obviously I lived right next to a public library, so
right,
I had the benefit of getting to walk to like infinite possibilities.
Yeah,
I didn't even have to ride my bike, it's so close. Like and that having that, like, you don't think of it when you grow up as this is the greatest asset a child could ever have, but it was like I constantly was checking out books 2-3 times a week. And you start in the Arthurian realm, you move over, and you can't wait till you get old enough to where you can understand Tolkien.
Yeah, for sure. Did you do you read much anymore, or did that sort of go the way of the dodo once life gets in the way, kind of thing?
No, man, I try. I don't read nearly as much.
Yeah.
But now it is about when I do have because before it'd be like, no, I'm gonna read for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Now it's I have 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna throw on Audible.
Yeah.
And that's how I have to do it now. I have to micro consume. I hate it. It's not how I like to read. I'm a slower reader too. I really like to have it soak in. So like those rainy day like back porch reading sessions don't happen nearly enough as they used to, but I try to keep up the best I can because it engages you in a completely different way and has your imagination working and building, because you're building a secondary world in your head of someone else's world. And that is so important to keep yourself fresh. It's filling the well, right? Filling the creative well. You have to ingest. In too many days, we can just do that visually. And okay, you know what? I need to absorb some fantasy, so I'm going to throw on The Witcher and I'm going to watch a couple of episodes. That's a very easy thing to do nowadays, but the most fulfilling you can do is really get engrossed in a good book. So
especially when you've read a book and then you look back on it and you can actually picture or remember things as if you were seeing them. Obviously different for people with aphantasia, I'm sure, but like for those who can picture things like myself, I'll read a book and then I'll have actually seen the scenes playing out, and it's it's you've been engrossed in a book when you remember it as if it was a movie.
so much so yeah, that's where the roots start, and then we really start playing with mechanics once it comes to Heroes Quest. Heroes
Right.
Quest in the United States in the initial, that got a ton of kids thinking about the mechanics of a dungeon crawl because it's super easy to set up dungeon crawl that anybody could run with pre-gens.
Right.
And you have for the first time you have miniatures that are pre-boxed up. You're like, oh, this is very cool.
Yeah.
And so that led to the eventuality of playing AD&D. And I played AD&D when I was in Boy Scouts. And that worked out great because what do you do when you get rained out? And we get rained out all the time on
Yeah. Yeah.
campouts growing up. So you would find whoever had the 6-man tent, you'd gather around, you'd pop out the lantern, and you get the old AD&D sheets
Yeah.
out,
Right.
and we'd have at it. And I went from AD&D to 5th edition.
Oh,
I
right.
had not, because when life sweeps you away, and you're turning 16, 17 years old in the
Yeah.
States, you get your driver's license, you start thinking you're an adult, and
Yeah.
you're wanting to do it's that great moment, kind of like in Stranger Things when the kids are growing up, you're doing other things, you're dating, you're experiencing life. So you're a little bit of that goes away. And also the technological part, like this is the time of EverQuest and the start of World of Warcraft, and like
Right. Yeah.
really
Yeah. Right.
intense RPG experiences, and Diablo 2 that are there, that like now you can do this on your own time and you're not organizing people. And so that kind of all of a sudden that really takes away from the hobby, and it makes it like, okay, I can get this whenever I want. It's a on demand kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I don't meet back up at a table around with players like that until maybe even I think I played Gloomhaven even
Oh,
before
wow.
I
Yeah.
got 5e, because it was
Jeez.
it was another thing. It was
Because it's another
adults with
board
a
game.
board
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And that's when you have other adults, they're like, okay, they're fantasy, and you have a board game night. It's like, oh, okay, this is I always look at Gloomhaven. That was like the
Yeah.
adult wave for Heroes Quest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Man, my
and
friend
so
of mine,
yeah,
friend of mine got Gloomhaven, and then was like, we played it like 3 or 4 times, and he's like, we don't, neither of us have the schedules that allow for this. This is such an involved game. I can't. I think he gave it away or sold it or something in the end because we were just not able to actually play it as often as as often as would have allowed for having such an enormous game. Yeah, I think
the true final boss.
I think I was. We had very similar sort of origins in that respect of like me always outside playing make believe and playing fantasy and stuff with my mates, and then it became apparent to my parents that I was that way inclined once I got to the age where all of my friends were like moving on to sports and girls, and I was still like putting on a cape and picking up a stick. And so they put me into like theatre and amateur dramatics and stuff, and I pursued a life as an actor, and then I always loved board games kind of in the background, but I'd never really heard about D&D. It just wasn't prevalent in my particular zeitgeist, I suppose, until I was much later, like late 20s, when finally I was watching some Will Wheaton, and he was playing Dragon Age RPG, and I was like, I think this is what Dungeons and Dragons is, isn't it? It's something like this. And so I got in touch with the one guy that I knew that actually did D&D, and was like, "Would you run me a game of D&D? I'm interested in playing." And then as soon as I did, I was like, heroin in the veins, and I need more of it immediately. I was like, D&D is my life now.
And there's something about reconnecting with the game that is so different once you come back to it as an adult. As a kid, you're very much into the gamification. You're in for the dungeon crawl, the gauntlet of it. Literally gauntlet the video game. It's a process. There isn't you don't have emotional stakes in weighted games like that. Doesn't have like your well isn't full of that yet. You don't have a bunch of life experiences. You're just now reading about them and experiencing them. So when you come back as an adult, you're like, oh, these are the things like I want to feel. Like I want this. I want multiple things with this, and it's a different walk down that road.
So you say you went AD&D straight to 5e. Have you since gone back and played any of the other editions just to like test them out, see what they're about, or have you still never played, say, 3.5?
So I learned more about 3.5 by messing around with Pathfinder than playing 3.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Same.
I learned more like, oh, okay, this is 3.5 roots by looking at it, because Pathfinder was what was dominant when I first started. Like, oh, okay, looking at this again. That's, everybody was still on that wave at the moment. So got to dabble with it. I looked at 4E. Never really sat down and created campaigns or played any of them with folks, but definitely always did my due diligence to see if there was something that I liked and I wanted to snipe from it. Because
Right.
In the end, you become your own designer for your own mind's eye game, or to fit the
100%.
constructs
Oh, yeah,
of what you're
100%.
playing. So it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
nobody's
is there something
like
here?
after you've been playing D&D for a while. There's no one playing D&D. Everybody's playing their own homebrew version of D&D that ranges from like 50% D&D to like 99% D&D. But everybody's like, well, in my games, at my tables, here's how I run this rule, and here's how I run this rule, and here's how I do this, and.
I feel so bad for people trying to figure things out now, because
they're watching all these different actual plays and they're like, but that's not how death saving throws work. And it's like, oh, it kind of is. Depends on who you're talking to.
We're playing 5e rules over Pathfinder with Pathfinder character sheets with 2e. So people are so lost right now. They're like, just get used to the RoBear E, because I love the creative character experience in Pathfinder.
Yes,
of like
yeah.
how ridiculous archetypes.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with it, but I have to streamline things. I don't need a rule for everything. I can, especially when we're on stream, like advantage, disadvantage made things possible to streamline.
Yeah,
so like,
absolutely.
Even though they have fortune and misfortune, we blend all the different words together. So it's like, we're still saying D&D phrases like, oh, I need a
dexterity save,
dexterity save or a strength save, and I'm like, oh yeah, you actually, it's fortitude here. But I'm like, eventually it all blends together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the joy of TTRPGs in the first place. Like the idea for me is you play enough of them and you pick out the bits you like and you pick out the bits you like from this one, and then you're like, oh, I kind of like the way that they do this, and I don't really like combat. So you play other TTRPGs and you're like, oh, I really like how they do combat in this TTRPG, and you mash them all together in your home games.
Beautiful big old casserole, baby.
Yeah, that's how it goes. So I actually do have a book of 4E that one of my fans has sent me like a year and a bit ago that I still haven't opened, but she's like, hey, 4E is really good for all of the things that you say you hate about 5E, like the monster like all of the monster stat blocks being really boring. Yeah, they fixed that in 4E. Go and read this, and I'm like, I'll get around to it. It's sitting there on my shelf. I'll eventually get to it. So did you ever actually go back to taverning as well, doing in real life stuff and games in the basement of your tavern after the pandemic kind of eased?
I am out. I have 2 nephews now. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old nephew, and I adore them. And I am able to be the uncle that shows up to things now. Before I worked every weekend.
Right.
I miss so many life things from my 20s all the way into my mid 30s. So like tavern business is on 24/7.
Yeah.
And you are the content creator for 150 IRL seats. And you're like, that's if I'm not there, then you can just watch the sales and they go. So having something now to use my better than lack of term, like you're selling your cult of personality in a different way, being able to do it here in VOD form, that's such a it's so cool. Like right now when I get done here, I'm going to play Mario Kart because it's Friday.
Nice.
My oldest nephew gets to play Mario Kart on Fridays.
Awesome, that's cool.
So he's getting his Uncle Ro time in, so we're gonna eat dinner together and do that. That was not even possible.
Do you let him win or do you kick his ass?
No, I don't let him. No, we're savage. He's gotten good because of it.
Exactly. That's how it is. the desire to win.
Uncle Ro's going to be in first, so I'm like, hey, you better be shooting for second and third. And it's cool because they have the tools in that game to where you when they first start out, they can have like bumper controls and like it gives them basic stability.
Yeah.
And like it's been so fun seeing him take those tools off. Like,
nice.
Uncle Ro, I think I'm ready.
I think I'm ready.
I think I got it. I think I'm ready for 150cc. I think I want. Yeah, because I'm like,
I really want to play Mario Kart.
He is eventually, in a couple of years, he's gonna overtake and destroy me, and I have to cherish it. You gotta cherish
it at the moments when you can actually kick his ass. Because he's got more time to dedicate to it than you do. As soon as he can
more
do
time
it,
and those fast twitch muscles on Rainbow Road.
Yeah.
Hey,
oh jeez,
it's tough.
Not going off the
I gotta
edge.
drive. I gotta drive like a blue hair on Rainbow Road anymore.
Eventually, he's going to be consuming all the videos that are like people going, here's a secret shortcut that you didn't know about on Rainbow Road. If you jump off just at the right moment, if you get this spin and then you jump off at this stage, then you can land on the road below. And...
That's the first thing he comes at me with. It's like, I have learned the secret path. I'm like, I don't even know where. He was like, here, let's show this on YouTube.
Nice.
I'm like, man, because I just got to grow up with Nintendo Power and the other handful of magazines.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's got everything. In his
I remember that.
fingertips.
We had one of the only consoles I've ever had in my life was an N64 when I was growing up. And the N64 magazine was the only way that you could get any sort of cheat codes or anything that like little hints about where secret things were. And then as soon as the internet came about, it was like, nah, all right, you can just Google it. Most efficient way to
how do I break this?
Yeah.
So
talking about 24/7 as a tavern keeper, let's talk Twitch 24/7 as a Twitch streamer. When you started out content creation, pivoted from tavern stuff, you went straight into Twitch or YouTube, or where did you first sort of cut your teeth, as it were?
Did Twitch for 2 weeks, then I went over to Mixer, and I took my 10 people from Twitch and I took them over to Mixer with me.
Yeah.
And we started playing Sea of Thieves co-op streams.
Yeah.
So for y'all that don't remember Mixer and one of its functionalities, one of the coolest things it did was when you're a nobody, you can take 4 nobodies and put them all together, and it merged your chats.
Right.
So
okay.
You got to have this awesome experience when everybody took their 10 people and you had this 40, 50 person chat that's flying by like a normal developed community. And man, it made you better because you were able to play and process and do that, but you never had that downtime. You were never going, oh man, I don't want to turn on stream because this is going to be me, and I don't know I don't know how to fill the air just yet. Luckily for me, as long as there's one person there, life is life is good because that's just the tavern business. You're sitting there used to talking to anybody. So it was very easy for me. But yeah, that's where it started. Then we were able to get like, hey, I want to get my D&D game on here. So I took my basement game and we got everybody set up. It was awful. We were playing with voice meter banana back then on everybody's setups. Mics were just hot trash. It was a struggle as a producer.
The old headset mics.
Sometimes you wish that they had a headset mic compared to like I'm on my laptops, interconnected. You're
Melted.
And it ran its course, but you did your first thing, you learn it. Like, and those are all back on YouTube. Everybody can see just how scuffed anybody who starts. Like it's the pursuit of perfection. You don't start there. Bit by bit, I was able to do 2 games. Once I got on 2 games, I was like, I think I can just do this. But that's when I was like, okay, if you're doing your normal due diligence, you're doing 4 hours of prep for a 4-hour show. Mm-hmm. You start to look at your time and you go, man, this is in the live streaming space. And the only way to grow is to just be more in the live streaming space. I have to figure something out.
Yeah.
Because now I've essentially pivoted to creating YouTube style content, but I'm not really on YouTube yet.
Yeah.
So the solution to that is I go, I'm going to roll 24/7. and because I have the computers to do it. So I'm going to syndicate myself so anybody can catch my programming during the week and know that I'm here, because that 4-hour window is too small to grow.
Yeah.
So I begin syndicating myself, and that's when everything takes off. Then we're talking substantial ad revenue money that's coming in from it because you're running yourself as a programming.
Right.
That's still my number one source that I live off of, way before
right.
direct support or anything else. It's just simple ads on it. I view it as a TV
Okay.
station. And
Yeah,
luckily
right.
enough, we are in a directory that's super small, that you can see everybody from pretty much the bottom to the top of the directory at any point in time here.
Yeah.
It's not one where you're buried. So if you were to do this thing in a directory that has a different culture, let's use the Destiny directory because this came up at one point in time. Some of those creators started running 24/7, and they, in a larger directory where it's more looked down upon because now you're hogging this top spot that only, they have thousands of creators, and now you won't leave to let somebody else
Right.
take
Yes,
another
I see
spot. That doesn't exist in our small D&D directory.
Yeah, right.
Because at any point in time there's really only about 30 or 40 of us running a game.
Yeah.
So you can see, because it's so hard to complete, so it doesn't have that, like, there isn't that negative to it. For us, I recommend that everyone, I wish, did it. So everyone's games were on there all the time. Then we wouldn't go from 60,000 people when Critical Role's watching to 235 off peak. We would be positioned to get more eyeballs and consumers on our product, whereas our directory would be raised. So I always tell everybody, I said, I think you should all syndicate your content until you get into a place where your YouTube community and your VOD is so good that you think that algorithm is enough to gain new viewership to sustain yourself. Otherwise, it's the only way you're going to make fans in different time zones, 100% from where you're at. And you know the struggle of having to do this in a different country, in a different time slot, that's reliant on a website that's primarily United States viewership, plus a little bit of, a small percentage on that at UK, and then goes down to Oceanic in English speaking world.
As someone based in New Zealand, most of my audience is North America followed by Europe, and so I have to stream at times that are best for both of those times. And then, like, my much smaller fan base that's in Oceania and Asia, they often miss out because my stream times are usually at 9 a.m. New Zealand time, because it's the time that's best for, like, right now, it's the time that's best for America and Europe as Europe goes to bed. And so a lot of my times are kind of dictated by when I think my audience is going to be live and about. And only if it's like I'm aiming for an Australian or Asian audience that I go, right, let's go into later in the day New Zealand time. But then by doing that, I'm missing out on America or whatever. So yeah, it's unfortunate that everybody's in different time zones, but it's a necessary beast. So you kind of looked at that and went, let's go 24/7 on my Twitch with my content. Now, when I used to see you doing reruns and things, it would be marked as like a rerun in the Twitch sort of list at the side, people who are live now, and it'd be like Captain RoBear's on, and it'd be a little symbol showing it was a rerun rather than actually live. Is that a thing that you changed, or is that a thing that Twitch changed? Because now it just shows you as live.
It's broke now. Like, so they put in the feature, like, I have it selected that I am a rerun.
Yeah.
And it's just not showing up anymore.
Yeah, it used to show the little symbol at the side. Instead of a red dot, it would be like a little arrow, and then it also used to show in the title of, like, brackets rerun. And I think Twitch used to just add that.
So you used to be able to, when you ran a rerun on Twitch, it was running a previous VOD inside Twitch.
Yeah.
And it would take care of the system, and it would put up the rerun logo.
Yeah.
But you didn't get paid in ads.
Oh. Okay.
So there was no incentive to do it.
Ah.
So then, Critical Role changed how they did theirs. I changed how I did mine, and it took probably a year and a half before they gave us a rerun button. And now, even when I have the rerun button, it's not showing up for folks.
It doesn't identify it, which ultimately I find hurts, because when I see, because I know you do it 24/7. I know D20 Deathmatch do like a 24/7 thing, and whenever I'm like ending a stream and gonna go raid into somebody, I go, oh, oh no, he's not, and then I'll just kind of dismiss it. And even if you are live, even if you would accept the views and the raid and stuff, I dismiss you as an option for like raiding, because I'm like, oh, it's a rerun. Because it doesn't show me that you're rerunning.
You want exactly. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not fun. So I always, for me, I always tell people I am live when the front of my stream says I am live.
Right.
It's the only true indicator.
Yeah.
that when I'm live, I always tag it with a red circle and live at the beginning of my stream title.
Right.
And that's the best best that we can do. But yeah, that's I feel so bad when it feels like they've been duped by it, and it's like, no, it's not. I'm not trying to dupe anybody.
Yeah, because that's the other thing.
I'm not trying to dupe anybody. I'm just trying to exist.
If it's not obvious that it is a Twitch problem, then you might look at the creator and be like, oh, that's shitty of them to not include that it's a rerun.
Yeah, and you can just like I said, you can tag the front. Like I can tag my title rerun all I want. It won't change. But it doesn't. It just stream titles are the last thing that anybody looks at. Like it needs it needs the actual system supported where it says live.
So the ad revenue you get on Twitch for doing the reruns, have you just set your ad to play like every 5 minutes or so? Or
I have always been ads every 15 minutes since I started.
Ads every 15.
Because I always knew that I was going to be an ad delivery platform.
Yeah.
And so my community got they never changed. So when ads came through, nothing changed. I said it's the exact same experience that it was before, and I hate it because it's they're not picture in picture and they're intrusive and they have so much to do to build off of it, but it literally is it's a large chunk of that pie of how I survive, and it's and it's completely free. So that's a huge part of what keeps the lights on over here.
Yeah, and on Twitch, if you don't want the ads, you can subscribe, and it gets rid of the inbuilt Twitch ads anyway. Yeah. Do you run advertisement through your own means, not Twitch ads, but do you run do you have sponsorships from people who get you to advertise their products and stuff?
That was a very wild time because I technically pulled my first run episodes off a couple of months ago because they went after everyone's sponsorships, targeting the size of them. So my biggest sponsor, Voodoo Ranger, United States craft beer company, they were going heavy in the paint on them about what they could do and what they couldn't do. They pulled all their stuff from Twitch immediately, pulled all of their stuff out of TwitchCon, and we were left here going, well, you can't tell me that my advertisement can only be 3%.
Yeah, 3% of the screen size and the
screen, and they were coming for people's advertisement. They wanted a piece.
We're not gonna pay you for being our content creators. We're also going to give you less than 50% from each of your subscriptions, and we're going to give you this and this and this, and we're going to give you crumbs to live off, and also we're going to say you're not allowed to find your own means of making money either. Thanks, Twitch. I'm fully understanding, because who does need the money? Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos needs all of the money. So yeah, good on you, Twitch, for fucking the people who are actually making your platform. Jesus Christ.
Unbelievable. And I tell people, people get excited about 70-30 on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I go, that is egregious. I said, I come from small business. No platform or service should be taking above 4% of our revenue for anything.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. If my credit card processing came at me and said, we're taking 30% of your revenue because you're the platform that you're the only, and they could do that. Because they're all how else are you going to run cards? You know?
Exactly.
They're going to force us onto Bitcoin. They can do that kind of stuff. But when we lost the internet war to Apple and Google on phones, they decided that 30% was going to be the standard of what they were going to take, and that's what made them the giant corporations that they are today. 30% even on YouTube isn't fair, and people are trying to just get back to that.
Yeah, like, can we not have 50%? Like, we're not a 50-50 split. We're not doing 50-50 of the work. Thank you very much, Twitch. I think for my stream, I'm doing more than 50% of the work. Give me more than 50% of my goddamn my revenue, my subscription revenue.
Such a weird time to be in, because the user wants to be here and they like the platform because they can go in between all the channels.
Yeah.
But it's the worst thing that you can do for the creators that you support is to be ingrained with it. You have to find a Patreon or a different way.
That's exactly why I tell my audience as much as possible, like, hey, if you want, like, direct donations, come to me through PayPal. PayPal takes like 5%. If you want to support me on Patreon takes like a very small margin as well compared to all these other platforms. Like, you can support me in more direct ways where I get more of your money, which means you don't have to actually give me as much for me to get even more benefit from it. And there is that, but there's also the case of, like, Twitch also incentivizes the people watching to be like, well, if you're not going to subscribe here, if you're not going to give us 50% of that $5, then here's an ad every few minutes or whatever.
We're going to make the user experience.
We're going to make the user experience
greater for you.
shitty as we possibly can, so that you give us the money instead of Patreon.
And it's very hard to translate support in a different way, because Amazon, they know that it is water is the least path of resistance.
Yeah.
They know how to monetize.
Yeah.
And everything is geared for that, for them to stick in that system. And it's hard to tell someone who supports you, can you support this different way? Can you go? They're already there doing something, and they don't know. It's the same amount of money that that leaves their hands.
Yeah.
They just don't understand just how impactful that can be when you move it. But you're asking someone else to change their habits on top of supporting you, which is that doesn't usually happen. People are creatures of habit, and
So aside from Twitch, when you started out, you grew on Twitch, and then you started moving across to YouTube. You started you more recently moved to started doing things on Kick as well, I've noticed. So
I just break the rules. The old contracts, technically, Yeah. If you are in the D&D business, you're able to stream everywhere because you're considered podcast content and not gaming.
All right.
So this came around back when Facebook first started its big push,
right?
And you could see this is when Critical Role went to dual streaming, and most people just thought, oh, okay, they have a good contract. No, that was in the old contracts. If you were podcast content. Because we don't even have a category on YouTube. How is that even possible in 2023 that there's not a Dungeons and Dragons category for us to put our content in?
Holy shit, I hadn't thought about
it. It blows my mind. We would tag when Fwiz was the head of YouTube gaming. We would tag him every weekend and be like, "How? Who's the one engineer that can type this? It just needs to be typed out."
Just imagine it. Just some guy just like smoking a cigarette, leaning back in his chair, looking at the input on the code, just been like, nah, it's too much work.
It's Boris.
I'm on my break
from GoldenEye, dude. He's just clicking his pen.
It's too much work. Dungeons and I misspelled dungeons. It's just too much. Delete.
Just put it under another game, kid. You're fine. So we started doing everything because we're too small to you're too small to be impacted for somebody to care about. So it's like we're gonna do everything that's good for us, and it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. That's just how we view it, and we're just so in this, you're so niche and you're so small over in this world. You got to do whatever you got to do to get yourself out there, and it works great for us because I don't know how anybody else is building themselves without YouTube side right now. You
Yeah.
really, it's the one algorithm that's working for you, and I know it. It's work. It's a lot of
That's
work.
the thing, isn't it? I was just gonna say, it's like it gets exhausting though, because like you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, like everybody who focused on Twitter did, and recently realized when it turned into a friggin' cesspool, and and Twitter seems to be imploding from the inside. And so everybody I know who's only big on Twitter went, oh shit, I guess I'm gonna branch out and try an Instagram now. So you don't want to you want to avoid that by being like, let's try and put myself on all these different platforms. But there are so many platforms, it's exhausting. Like Threads started recently, and with Instagram and Twitter and Twitch, and now I've started on TikTok. I've got a podcast. Like putting myself out there to be like, hey, too many, like get more eyes on my product, and like, do you like the stuff that I do? You like the D&D things I work? Like enjoy this. And now there's Kick and there's Hive and there's Mastodon or whatever else tried to break big when Twitter was going down. It's exhausting, but it becomes like a lot of your daily work just becomes like making sure you're putting content out on all these different places.
Freaking admin. I did not get into this world, creative world, to be buried in admin.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does, and that's that's it. On top of that, folks that don't have editing skills yet, you're gonna figure it out because you don't have the money to hire it out yet. So you need to figure out at least at least the simple stuff, or just figure out a way to produce your live show that looks the best that it can, so you can direct rip it. And I mean, that's what saved me.
That's
I was
the
like,
thing, isn't it?
I'm not doing a single edit to that D&D show. I produce it just like it was a live TV show on any of the major networks. I'm gonna do the best I can to make that 3.5 to 4 hours look the best that it can. But I'm not going out and editing or rendering or doing any of that. It's getting shipped out as that piece. Because just one, you don't have the time, and you either don't have the skills or the money to do it. So it's like that's audio equalizing and color balancing. That's all fun stuff for the rich folks. Yeah,
exactly. I most of my stuff, like this short rest series, gets top and tailed to just take off the long starting soon, and then take off the end stuff where I'm like raiding into Twitch, and that's not appropriate for YouTube. So I just top and tail it for the most part. I'll get my editor fancy to top and tail it, and then chuck it up on YouTube, and then we strip the audio from that and put it up as a podcast pretty much as is. We take snippets from it and make it into YouTube shorts and Insta Reels, and try our best to just use content for everything without like minimizing the amount of work that it takes to actually make unique content for everything.
Yeah.
It's exhausting that we even have to do that though, and not just focus on making Dungeons and Dragons, like playing D&D, or like making content about it, and you have to do all this other stuff just to try and get out there and get seen by an audience, because as niche as our industry is, there are so many people doing it that it's like, hey, how about my stuff though? I'm also doing an actual play. trying to find people who are actually interested in any of that.
Instead of you could have spent that 2 hours that you spent on thumbnails.
Yeah.
You could have gone for YouTube thumbnails, doing ridiculous dark arts things to try to get attention off of a stupid thumbnail. You could have spent making a better encounter, or being more prepared for your session,
or even just watching just watching and consuming other Dungeons and Dragons content stuff, so that you can like everybody's putting out tips and tricks for being better dungeon masters and running better encounters and stuff. And when I see them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Maybe I'll take something from that. Maybe I'll steal something from their idea, or I'll watch this actual play and go, oh man, I really love how this dungeon master runs this encounter. Maybe I'll use that. I don't have the time to consume those things anymore, so I'm not getting those little tidbits to steal from anymore. So I'm not. 100%. I feel like I'm not, and I don't have the time because I'm doing all of this other work. I don't have the time to be reading, so I'm not improving my vocabulary, and I'm not improving my creativity. So I feel like I'm stagnating as a dungeon master because I'm trying to force myself onto all these platforms, and it's kind of like this tipping point of like, well, what's the point in forcing yourself out there in front of all these people's eyes if you're not improving yourself and your craft while you're doing it?
It's such a good point. especially for all the new creators that may be in this chat right now or who watches this, you have this early advantage. When you first start out, you have the time to watch and consume so many other folks' stuff to get better. The further along you get, the less you get to do that.
Yeah.
And
Kind of get
it
locked
does.
into
You stagnate.
who you are and what you're known for, and like this is your pigeonhole. Stick in it. Becomes a real effort to go. I'm gonna pivot and make completely different content, and I'm gonna see a big drop off of the people who are interested in me because of it. Oh well, it's the nature of the beast that we're doing, and at least we get to do what we love. So
very true.
Your full-time job is Dungeons and Dragons related content, or do you do other things as well? Do you branch out? You got a day job? Nothing like that.
Nope, full deal. And everything else is just a side hustle these days.
And do you give yourself time off from it and be like, I don't work on weekends, or like, what do you?
100%. Yeah, I got to the point where no, I don't. It has to be charity.
Yeah.
It's so a friend has to ask me. Like in this case, you buzz me. 100%. Always in for friend or working peers or charity. Yeah. But past that point, no, I enjoy, because like I said, I came from not having them. So now that I do, right. I try to soak up as much of that family time. You know, during COVID, my family lost my mother and my aunt. They had both long been suffering from cancer. So it was towards the end of it. So like I got older. My parents are a little bit older, in the 70s, 76 range for my dad. So it's like, once you get to that point, you're like, hey, you realize, you start to count the weekends and go, we got like 160 lake weekends, maybe. We have, because they're finite. You only got a handful more of them of big opportunities left. So you start to quantify the opportunities, and you go like, for instance, I canceled my PAX West plans because I was like, it's Labor Day weekend here in the States, and I'm gonna spend it with my family. But I've been to every one of them since I got into this, because I needed to network and be there. I finally feel that I can afford to not be there and go. So I canceled my plans, and I hate it, because normally everybody can always find me at the Voodoo Ranger a bar. If there's a Voodoo Ranger bar, I'm there, and I've been tied to that for a long time. But I said, no, this one I can afford to it. I don't want to travel twice in 1 month anymore. And I know that sounds, you for everybody else in Oceanic would be like, I would kill to be able to network and travel. It's like we got to pick out one event in the year. But like, here, eventually it starts to be diminished returns. At that point, you have met the people that you need to meet. If there is work to come in, they know you, and that work will be funneled. Most of it goes, hey, if Critical Role doesn't take this project, I'm like, sure, you bet. You holler at me. I'm sure they will. They don't not take much anymore. It was fun to see them, now that they have all their own products, them being out on the Gen Con scene. Now they're everywhere, because they have a million things to sell. But yes, this is my only deal. Anything else I do is all extra. The only thing new that I've done is start a second channel that I'm collaborating with just Sam, and my name is Bife. My name is Bife. Is a big lore content creator in the Destiny 2 world, and I have recently got him hooked in the last couple of years to my style of D&D. So he's become obsessed. So we started Baldur's Gate and Beyond as a second channel to cover Baldur's Gate 3, and we're trying to capture, while everyone is super invested inside this video game, we're trying to get them to take whatever they're playing in the video game and take it to tabletop. So we're showing them, hey, this is your build in Baldur's Gate 3.
You can actually play that.
You can actually play that build.
You think
over here.
Baldur's Gate is open world? Let's take you to a TTRPG now.
Let's show you the world.
I wonder if Baldur's Gate is a is the sort of missing step for a lot of people to get their friends and things into D&D. Because one of the questions I get asked a lot when people enter in the channel, being like, "Hey, I love your work with blah 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 blah. How do I start playing D&D? None of my friends are interested." And I usually have to say, like, well, maybe they are interested because a lot of people, there's still a lot of stigma around it, so maybe they're interested and they just haven't voiced it. B, maybe they aren't interested but they would be if you like pitched it to them right. And C, maybe they'd be interested if you kind of like gateway drug them onto it with like board games and things. Get them into playing board games, and if they like board games, get them into playing more role play kind of board games. Where you're playing like a particular character, or you have like a character sheet, but you're still playing a board game, and then from there maybe you get into D&D. But like if they're not interested in board games, you get them into video games. Are they a video gamer? If they are a video gamer, consider giving them Baldur's Gate 3 as a birthday present or something, and maybe then they can get into D&D.
It's a huge bridge. It's a huge bridge, and it's undeniable. Like it's X amount of people being exposed to our hobby that haven't been exposed before, and that leads to opportunity.
Yeah.
And if you've wanted your friends to play D&D, this is your best chance right now with this game, because it's so close and so aligned. Like that's if they don't like it, then they're not going to enjoy the tabletop experience. It's a really good litmus test. And at the end of the day, the hardest part for you is trying to figure out, how do I gather people? Like, I don't even think that D&D is the hardest part about getting people interested in D&D. You need to be an efficient communicator with how to gather people, and you need to understand what motivates them. For me, to be honest with you, one of the best parts about COVID was people attending D&D, because you had no excuse. You were at home. Everybody had a C920 and a Yeti or some garbage microphone, and you could play.
Everybody ran out of all of the other things that gets in the way of D&D. All of those memes that we see millions and millions of times of like fucking, you have my axe, you have my bow, Thursday's not good for me. Like you ran out of all of these things.
The only excuse during that was when we had grocery pickup times.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to go to the grocery store when we wanted to, and you're like, no, hey guys, sorry, but 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock was my grocery time. And, I have to. I have
gotta
nothing.
go shopping.
I'm eating beans and tuna fish.
How weirdly post-apocalyptic was that 3-year period? Just looking back and going, there was a period of time that was just unlike anything else we've lived through. It's the sort of thing that it made me recontextualize like my grandparents' stories of rationing after the war and stuff. Of going like, what would it have been like to have ration books and have a rationed number of eggs and stuff that you can buy. And I was like, oh, this is what it would have been like, rationing toilet paper and such.
There are still processors in our area that are full since COVID for processing meat, because everyone went with, I can't get it at the grocery store. They went direct to farm, and they bought half side, full side, or they all maxed out their hunting tags. So for us, we filled with venison immediately. That was the first thing. Was like, country boy wheels through mud. I come from that area, so it's like 100%. This is what they did. They all they immediately went into survival mode, and like you couldn't get an actual processor. You were gonna have to process it yourself on site. So you're doing all the old things of like, okay, this is what's getting made into jerky. This is what's getting ground and frozen. Like, breaking down, like actually having to do the work to see the food that you eat. And everybody, all your friends who had chicken coops were so smug. They were so smug during COVID. Oh, I have unlimited farm fresh eggs.
I have an egg machine,
chicken
don't
coop
you know?
owner, they were you couldn't fathom to hear them listen to them anymore. They were so happy about themselves.
And then since then, people have started getting into the I've got work and I've got this and that and the other, and you see it slipping again of people going, I'm not making time for D&D. Even I'm just as bad. Like I'm so busy that my home games haven't played in months. I'm like, I'll get around to them. I'll eventually start my home games again. But it's hard to sort of prioritize them when it's like, I could be streaming this game as a GM for hire and earning money, or I could be streaming
Yeah.
this game for my friends, which I really enjoy and I love the story of it, but it's several hours of prep and several hours of game time that I'm not seeing monetary response for.
Bill's got to get paid.
Bill's gotta pay, yeah.
I have my soft spot in my heart. Like when I do in person anymore, I try to get my folks that are like early parents, somebody who, because then they want it. If they set the date and they free up and they get a family member or a babysitter and taken care of, they are committed. I know they're showing up to that session, and I know how much that session means to them because they made time for it.
Yeah.
It's everybody else that has too much freedom that goes, well, maybe I just don't feel it today. I don't have time for that. I'm ready to play all the time, anytime, and it's either do that or just not. Like it's just not gonna work. Especially when you cancel. Like I just can't even fathom playing like that anymore because I get frustrated when we have a week apart. And in-person D&D is the most sporadic thing that can possibly happen.
Yeah.
Now I'm just too spoiled to where I'm like, really, if we're not doing this at this kind of frequency, I almost don't even want it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that's totally fair. So let's pivot a little and talk about your DMing style. Like, how do you feel like you developed who you are as a DM? Like, what influenced it, and what do you pride yourself on being as your sort of unique point of sale as a dungeon master?
So mine all comes from that classic like Southern storyteller. I have it. That's my DNA. I've been sitting around listening at the gas station for a long time. Well, unfortunately, sitting there with my dad talking to 18 farmers before we can get home, and I'm just sitting there with my typical American 32-ounce styrofoam Coca-Cola product, just sitting there, just taking in all this random information that somehow someday will fill me in. You got to be a jack of all trades. You got to know a little bit about a lot,
right?
And
It's
that pays dividends.
The old jokes about like woe betide any FBI or CIA employee that tries to look at the search history of any dungeon master and work out if they're a threat, and be like, how long does it take for blood to dry, and like how much blood is in a human body, and like what would be the effect of drinking acid? And you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And then immediately the next one is like, how does a windmill work? And then like, how does
I never thought dungeon master search history is a wild place.
It's the craziest shit.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make an explosion out of rope?
Of course. And oh man, Boy Scouts lent to that so well. That adventure, like that's that early onset adventuring for a child here in the States, getting to go out and it's you're on your own. Let's go do this. Let's go hang out in the woods and set up camp, and like you're on your own fellowship in the first place. So like I had a lot of things that led to giving me the skills to do that, but I make sure to tell people that it's part of what I do is just DNA. I'm very comfortable in public speaking and improv. I'm the one non-theater kid. Now, I'm not completely out of it because I played cello. So I always played pit orchestra. So I've been around theater kids my entire life. But I just played in the pit below, which I loved. Okay. I missed that so there's nothing like theater opening weekend, full pit, let's do this, and then the craziness of all the stuff that goes wrong, but people magically save, and the improv, and you're like, the audience will never know because you are a god. You're amazing. Like I do. I miss that. That's something I'll never be able to tap back into in the rest of my life. But
I always had the most awe and respect for the band during like a musical. I did a production of Les Mis when I was in high school, and the number of times that somebody would skip a verse, or they'd miss a couple of lines, and then they'd try and like flub it, and they'd go back or something, and I'd be like, how? But music is, and I'm not musically minded at all, so it was even more impressive to me because I don't know how much work it takes. But like, I'd be like, but the music on the sheet, it does this and this and this and then the bar and the next bar and the next bar, and then and they've had to like between them as a band, they've had to just like cut out a section to try and catch up where the vocals are because the guy skipped a verse, or like they've had to go back and repeat a bar or something to try and like.
I never envied my conductors. Oh man, having to get everybody, because it's each section and your eyeballs are going up and it's like, we are looping, we are looping.
Like, and that's not the line. I guess we're going to repeat this for a bit.
So much fun though. It's a fun. And that's another experience of group getting to be a part of so much something that's so much larger than your individualism, because you're just the sound that's coming out of you is from this 50-piece orchestra, and then you're communicating up with actors that are on the stage to create this thing. Definitely part of the pie that's made my style. So that's I guess if there's anything that's really definitive about my storytelling is that music side and component has always been so large for me. We always heavily soundtrack games. Having the ambiance is 100% critical for me. So I spend a lot in the licensing catalogs to make sure that I have fresh, new, fitting music that really makes our stories compelling. And I feel that it also helps bring out the early RPer, someone that may be struggling to find their footing, even in just a group, a new group or different people. That can help set the stage to get us into much smoother RP. And that's kind of always been my calling card over the top, is making sure that we have really good dynamic soundtracked stories, and getting to soundtrack while people are storytelling. It's such a treat. To change in between all those tracks.
It's one of the things that I've always recognized that myself as like a missing component. Like if I was ever to direct a movie, I would definitely need like a co-director that's just for like working out the soundtrack and the soundscape and stuff of it, because I have no interest or knowledge of any of it. And I'd be like, sad music, I guess, I don't know, put some sad music on, and they're like, yeah, but what do you want? Strings? Do you want? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know the types of instrument there are. Just go and make some things that sound sad.
Hours of meta tagging, Robert. Hours of meta tagging. It's thousands and thousands of tracks that are ambient, hopeful, yet slightly sorrow, and like that's.
Right.
You can't remember it all. You can't. Right. I know my artists that I trust, but that doesn't they make a wide breadth of music. So it's like you just have to have this crazy organized catalog of meta tagging, and then have the delivery system to be able to do it. Like we do ours over Foundry, but there's a lot of VTTs that don't even have an audio component. Yeah. Then you're talking about the real dark arts of trying to figure out how you feed music, and so the minute that it's not a quality enough to where it's like, oh, you're playing music over Discord. No, no,
yeah,
that ain't the way.
I'll just play it at my house and put it at the microphone. It's fine. I generally tell, if I am doing online stuff, I'll generally tell people, feel free to be playing whatever music you want in your own house right now. Just like play your own music in the background.
Yeah.
And if I'm in person and we get into a fight, I'll be like, can somebody find some battle music? I'll put it on the players to just be like, you find something that feels appropriate. And usually there's a player at the table who really likes music. Exactly. Like, or if you're a home game and it doesn't matter about DMCAs, they'll be like, Lord of the Rings soundtrack or whatever, Witcher soundtrack. So aside from the music and the soundtracks of your games, what is something that you would pitch yourself as being like really good at this particular element of the game? Do you really enjoy the combat element of D&D? Do you pride yourself on running like really dangerous combats? What sort of things?
I think I'm good enough at breaking the rules to know when to pace things out. Something that we do in combat a lot is just shuck the idea of, every round is this many seconds. Sometimes you need to take the time to have this back and forth interaction that makes it cinematic. So I'm trying to make it as cinematic as possible.
Yeah.
Instead of just super tactile. And that we want our combat to mean something. especially because it can get to a slog at certain times when people are really really worried about their character. They're going to take maximum amount of time to make sure that we get a good outcome because they're invested in their story, and you're going to go max time on a lot of those. They're not necessarily being a abusive player and taking too much time or anything like that. They're just going to go through their full allotment, and if you go through that process with every individual character, the higher the stakes get, those things can really get down to a bog. So I think I do a good job of my pace in those, and I know I've gotten sufficiently better over time just by running. Your time constraints. Try to get in the most stuff that the group wants to do within those. I try to make sure that we don't go without one thing too long. We need enough RP. We need some stakes that make the RP meaningful. And to make sure that we hit that mix, I would never send us off. Like, I would never do more than, if we had 3 episodes that were RP only, man, those would have to be absolute like bangers. Like and they were like, if they were, then like, okay, so be it. Like that's awesome. But like, some groups, maybe they need that combat session in the middle of that. Some people can handle it at the end. All depends on the group of how they flow and when they want to get into that next encounter. Especially with doing it as a show, there isn't a lot of random encounters. The encounters happen because they're meaningful, or the encounters happen because they conjure them.
Because you've done something to screw up, and it's not random. You've done it.
Yeah.
you planted a bean or something. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I don't tend to, like, I'll have random encounters if I have to, but if I have random encounters, it's because the existence of random encounters is there for a reason. Like, if you've gone into a place that I want to establish as being very dangerous, then I might have random encounters because the random encounters are serving a purpose of showing you there's danger around every corner here, and not every fight will mean everything. But if you're just traveling from one place to another and you're not through a particularly dangerous part of the world, I'm not going to put a random encounter there just to slow you down.
Six owlbears come out of the woods.
It's going to be there for a reason. It's going to be there because one of the creatures has something on them that you can loot after they're dead or whatever.
I'm completely. I forget it because I talk about it so much. The main deal is I always run a DMPC. I forget that. I talk about it so much now I just forget about it. So I always play a DMPC inside the party, and have since I have always started. This comes from Heroes Quest. Back in the day when someone's trying to determine who they want to be who wants to be the GM over this dungeon crawl, but everybody wants to play. It's like, okay, we can do this. I can flip to the page and fill out what's in here because I don't even know what's next. So I developed a style of playing. Naturally, what I like to play anyway is a supportive, reactive character that generally fills a handful of tropes to assist the party. So I play a lot of Healbot, and you're a cleric, you're a druid, you're a bard, something that the party wasn't playing. I always look, everybody makes their choice, and then I pick out something that's completely off the wall just to help them. That's a reactive scenario. So all I'm doing is reacting to what the party does. And so my main deal is I'm facilitating conversation. They're my boots on the ground to help steer things when they need to be steered, to help facilitate conversation between all the members of the party. So being very invested in their story, and also being that character with them that's on the journey. I get to be a part of that party. Like, I want the party to succeed just as much as them, and being able to play off of that. It's something that's always gotten a bad rap, but it's, you have to use that tool in the proper way.
It gets a bad rap because it comes from the reputation of somebody playing a DMPC being the front runner of the party as well, being the face of the party, and the DMs who want to just basically play with themselves but with people present. There's some joke there about Louis C.K. But having a DM who's playing a PC that's just like I'm in the background until you turn and ask me a question, and then I can be the DM's voice of being like, hey, maybe we should try this thing. That's kind of how I would run DM PCs as well. I try to run them as little as I can, just basically because I always forget that they're there. Like it will inevitably, whenever anybody joins the party for even like a couple of missions, like if it's an escort quest or something like that, or like a just here help me fetch this thing, like any time there's a PC that's with them for any amount of time, it inevitably gets to the question from one of the players being like, hey, where's Kettle's theme at right now? And I'm like, oh, yeah, she's definitely there. She's I guess she was with you during the... Did she also make it through the acid trap then? How did she... Oh, she managed... She had magic... She had a thing that... She found a different way around.
And if there is anything, if there comes a time, and this happens sometimes in high stakes combat towards the end of a campaign, there'll be a time where we might be in a DPS check scenario where the party needs to go full send.
Yeah.
What I will do is go, hey, look at the rest of the table. What do you guys want? In this case, we'll use Braum, one of my characters, cleric dwarf. What do you guys want Braum to do? Or what do you think he would do?
Yeah.
So then I put it on the players,
that makes sense.
And they'll be like, "No, we want him to go full send, do this
we need
aura,
him to
drop
help.
dawn.
Yeah, we need to do this and this and this." And then it's they've each
drop a
got their own
random
player, and then they've got a collective player that they can also control to try and help out as well. Makes sense.
And then we'll RP that scenario of those players of like them influencing that character to do it. So that's how I.
Yeah, I do a similar thing, and I also do another way of dealing with not having to cope with too many DMPCs and stuff, is that I'll often, and I use this for if any of the players can't make it, but the rest of them want to continue anyway, so that I don't put that person in particular danger while they're not actually there to control a character. I never want to kill a character where the player's not actually there for them. But like in those situations, I'll often go, well, the NPC, while you're doing this thing over here, fighting this big bad guy, the NPC is off over here, off screen, as it were, fighting the minions, and like keeping that stuff happen. So I'll be like, they're included in a narrative way, but they're not included in the initiative, just to keep things like focused on the people who are actually at the table. So often my DMPCs, for want of a better term, are just like off screen dealing with something else nearby.
Yeah.
So we're coming up to the section where I like to just open it up at the end for audience questions. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat, even though I'm not reading or responding to a lot of the chat right now, because RoBear's much more interesting than you plebs. If you do ask us a question, I hope anybody from your... I just realised that people from your community here been like, fucking rude asshole. This is just who I am. If you want to ask a question, you can do so with the 50-point channel point redemption D&D question. It enters into my redemption queue, and that way I don't miss it if I'm talking and miss your question coming in. So please, peasants, enter your questions as much as you can, and we'll get to them in a moment. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk about the future of Captain RoBear, the future of D&D in general as well. So let's start with your channel and your brand. What do you see for your future? Are you pushing towards anything in particular?
Everything on my channel is in my own homebrew world now. So we're in Faltura. We're building city states out on it. And my world is open source. So I like to say, not my baby, our Frankenstein. So anybody that is a part of those groups is building that world.
Yeah.
And we're making that, all the campaigns are happening. Anything that happens on Faltura is happening at the same time. We're having fun. We're having fun with that. We have 2 campaigns in it, Stormforge and Marrowstrand, both different city states that are in the week. And then our mod campaign comes back on, my only commission campaign that I run anymore for those folks. They're getting their first custom character art is getting done for them, and they're getting their own city state inside Faltura. And we're going to come back to doing that on Sundays again. So they're going to get brought into that world. So everything in that world is now playing 5e rules inside Pathfinder 2e, and we're having a blast with that. So that's awesome. The amalgamation kind of on my channel. then I'm playing strictly what we're calling Larian rules D&D on Baldur's Gate and Beyond.
Right.
And we're gonna have a Monday campaign for it, and we're trying to use any of the ways that you can build characters inside Baldur's Gate 3 because they don't have prereqs.
Right.
So you can really go ham on wild builds there. So what we're trying to do is give the same experience inside tabletop that we can. So we're going to do one that's set strictly in Baldur's Gate inside that world with those different moving parts and NPCs, stuff that's familiar. So I'll be making my return to a weekly regular D&D campaign with it on Mondays, and that's kind of where I get to do more YouTube-y stuff, where we're actually going to talk about like book releases. We're not going to try to cut. We're not going to. There's plenty of people that do a way better job than me at breaking down what's in a book, and we're just going to try to get. Hey, what do I think brings value? Like in Bixby's, what do I think is of value in this book for the dungeon master or the player? And I just try to give you the shortcut of like, hey, this is what I'm going to use this book for, and what I think it's valuable.
That makes sense.
I haven't really ever had time to do that, but now that I have, 3 people on the channel, it's like, okay, this is great. Someone does socials, someone does this. I can just concentrate on this. That's a very good feeling. I'm used to having 30 employees, so this whole world of having to do everything your own again is wild.
That brings me on to a question that I did see come in earlier. That was something I wanted to ask about and didn't get to circle back to. In the D&D content creation, are you a solo party? Like, have you got editors? Have you got anybody that you turn to assist with any sort of jobs? Someone who creates overlays or?
I use full-time graphics folk and artists for art commissions now. I'm able to afford 100%. I don't do I have one standard overlay that I can pretty much I can produce an overlay quick if I need it for a charity event or anything, but it's going to be a more of a bare bones, but I have it and it's there available to me to make. But when I want to do something custom, I use my buddy Copper Lion for overlays and graphics and stuff. He does a fantastic job. There's so many of them, man. And that's the one thing, you think you got to do everything at the very beginning. There's so many people that are in your range that you don't know. Production wise, once you start getting a little bit of money in that you can use, and then there's people I splurge in like Mike Pape, which I'll pay full book cover price for those kind of things. If you've seen the Stormforge art, it's amazing. It's what it's incredible artwork, and I will splurge. But we've started a program of selling the fine art print, so that's in itself. We're trying to get the art budget to fulfill the art budget,
that makes sense.
Kind of deal. But that's I wish I had a full-time dedicated editor, but I don't. I have a spot. I still pay hourly, per piece.
Like here, this is what I need for this. Edit it and pay individually.
I mean, we're trying to find any solution to chop our stuff up now. We have over 800 episodes of D&D now that are on the channel, and we don't have nearly enough of this cut into shorts. So, we're trying to use, AI to separate things. How do you do, how going back in, trying to find the great moments. It's a lot of time of rewatching and cutting and clipping. And it'll be nice to take that next step to where it's like, oh, okay, this is a team that's dedicated to chopping up that 4-hour piece into the most usable stuff. That's always the struggle, but man, it pays all dividends being able to do it.
Especially if you do then get the shorts that you can put out on 100 different platforms to monetize on the short attention span of various different media.
Man, are they short.
If you can, like, even a YouTube short that's like a minute at most, so many people are swiping off them within the first few seconds. You've got to really catch somebody in the first few seconds, and so it becomes exhausting to be like, oh my god, how do I keep chasing these shorter and shorter and shorter attention spans?
The windows are bad, man.
So
I see that first question. That do you think you are more interesting than us?
Obviously.
Hey, if you're not a narcissist in this DMing business, then I don't know what to tell you. You have to be. You have to think that you're great. You don't have enough time to question yourself. You got to go. You gotta send it.
Yeah, your folk, any of your folk in the audience who aren't as familiar with my content will probably not know that my go-to humor is that of being immodest, that of saying that I'm better than everybody else, kind of thing. In this.
I love it. I love it.
I don't like the false modesty, and so I kind of go swinging the other way. I don't like people who go, I'm okay in this, I guess, or whatever. I'm not that pretty or whatever. It's like, you're a lingerie model. Like, stop, like, own it.
You're the 0.001%.
Yeah. Own the things you're good at. Own the things you're good at. I'm a fantastic dungeon master. I don't know the first thing about sports ball. All right, I'm happy to say that I'm not a musician. I am not a sports guy. I don't know anything about chemistry, but I am very good at zoology. I'm very good at geography, and I'm very good at Dungeons and Dragons. Like, so I kind of go the other way with my go-to.
That is the best dungeon master tip that you can give anyone. Play to your strengths.
Play to your strengths. Absolutely.
Stop trying to be a Robert Hartley or a Captain RoBear, and figure out what your strength is. If you're a creative writer, creative write.
Yeah.
Don't try to become try to do my improv deal or anybody else's. Take your strength, put all your weight into it, and then punt on your weaknesses. Because you're not the hardest you work on the worst thing that you're at, you may get 3 or 4% better, maybe 5%. It's awful.
Yeah,
it's not. And anybody that is elite and at the top of their field will tell you you have to go all in on what you are and what you possess. Otherwise, you can't be the best. That is being the best of yourself, and you just have to figure that out. You got to be you have to be brutally self-aware.
Brilliant. There's the shot from this video. My Fancy's the one who does the editing of just as we were talking about going through the whole thing, trying to find sound bites. She was talking to me the other day. I was chatting with Quincy from Quincy's Tavern, and we had some fantastic talks about content creation, how he creates for TikTok and things, and a lot of our really good like epic gold advice moments were like part of rambling conversations. And so she was like, I can't cut it into a sound bite. I can't cut like and I was like, I need a section. I need to introduce a section of Short Rest which is like sound bite moment. Give me something that I can clip into a shot for YouTube.
Oh God, it hurts, but it's so true.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. So Blue Sky, end goal for RoBear. What do you plan for the rest of Captain RoBear? Do you want to be D&D for the rest of your life? Do you want to branch into? Do you want to publish your own setting and your own game that is kind of an amalgamation of rules? Do you want to write a novel? What other things are on the horizon that you'd love to explore?
I am the one person that doesn't want to do that generally in this industry. I don't think I'm ever going to release a setting because the way that we build it is open source.
Yeah,
and it involves everyone, so like we don't take sole ownership over that IP. Those are daunting tasks, man. Those sound like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I really love what I do. Like I get to wake up and have so much fun doing what I do.
On the topic of the open source stuff, just to cut you off a second there, that also sounds like a lot of work, because do you just kind of loosey-goosey the canon of things? If everything's happening simultaneously in this world, how do you keep a track of what is affecting other things? Is it just like,
Right now, it's very little because they're just beginning out in those city states. Like, they're just fleshing out what these areas even look like. So the crossover has been very, very minimal.
Yeah.
That's going to be, it really comes down to it's a hardcore wiki.
Yeah.
When you get to it,
yeah,
if you start, you're building a community, like with your community that's invested in this world, you take volunteers and you build this wiki out so people understand. Otherwise, it is the Charlie Day meme of the strings.
The strings and going, this is okay, but listen. Man, I've had that.
I mean, that's how you do it. And it's my first time doing it. So who knows? Might crash and fail. Maybe we, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But we're finding out. We're doing it live. But
look, we'll do it live.
The fun that the folks have of having the interconnected world makes the investment for somebody who actually does then watch. If they're just watching the second show, they're invested 8 hours a week. Then I'm giving them the bang for their buck for being invested in the second show.
Yeah.
Having the interconnected world gives a reason for somebody to go back and watch in VOD or do something else other than just being, hey, I only have time for this, because we ask a lot. That's an incredible amount of time for our community members to be invested, and I try to make it as valuable as possible.
Yeah, nice. All right, well, let's start heading into questions, or we'll run out of time for them. Stizzy asked an hour ago, what's your introduction to D&D? I think we covered that. I got into it through knowing a guy who was a dungeon master and seeing Will Wheaton playing something similar and going, that looked fun. Maybe I should play some of that.
Yeah.
And you got into it through Boy Scouts and wanting to do some AD&D and some. So did you have the AD&D, or was it a friend of yours that had been gifted it and was like, hey, do you want to play this with me? Do you remember?
Another scout that was a couple years older than me that understood the material a little bit better.
Right.
And
he was like, hey, you'd be good at this.
Yeah. They were 10 or 11 when I was 8 or 9. So that helped, like, having a dungeon master, a little bit more processing power there. Till you're able to get a little bit more capable.
Makes sense.
And
that's
that's a lot of homebrew AD&D. Like, I mean, it is AD&D, but it's campfire with kids.
With kids.
Who knows what kind of system we created at the end of that? We're rolling dice. We're rolling dice and telling stories. That's the important part.
Exactly. That's the important part. Above all else, it's just like, look, if the dice fall aside and you forget to even roll them for a session and you're telling stories, you're still winning. What was I going to say about that? I did a panel at Gen Con that was called "Learning a New RPG System" and like tips and tricks for like how do you pick up a new system that nobody knows. And my best advice was like, find somebody who knows it. Like, play it with somebody who's played it. Like there's going to be people who are like, this is my TTRPG. I love playing Pathfinder. I love playing Dread. Or I love playing 10 Candles or whatever. And find a person who plays it and play it with them. At least
I swore off ever touching Pathfinder for years.
Right.
For years, because I was like, no, this is not. I was like, this is not. Yeah. It's too much for me. It's too much for me. And they're like, hey, you should really look at second edition. The action economy is actually, I think you'll enjoy. And I'm like, no way. And I look at it and go, they found a way to simplify something. This is really good. I like this. And then I became a convert on some of their tweaking their systems. But if it was something, if I wasn't at the place where I was at to be able to tweak, it wouldn't have been the right thing for me when I looked for it.
That makes sense.
I think D&D is still the gateway. I still feel that very strongly, to take that first step so people aren't overloaded, because that can happen. A lot of reading.
Yeah. Fanciest 43 minutes ago, does RoBear have a team, or is it just him? So you mentioned you like commission people to do various different things for you, but you don't have anybody that's like a full-time or part-time member of what you would call the RoBear team.
No. RoBear's all that's hire out when we can. Other than that, you do it in-house, and it goes by economy. When it's like when times are good, you got more money to play, and when they're not, when the budgets are tighter, then you do as much in-house as you can. That's where things like I was talking about, taking portraits off of Baldur's Gate. That's the kind of resourcefulness. That's the kind of stuff you need to do when all of a sudden you're like, we don't have money for this, and we want to have a good looking token. That's the things you start looking at there.
I mean, it makes sense.
But
necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Mother of all creation.
100% there.
Stacey asked, do you think you're more interesting than us?
That's what I said. When I said you're a narcissist, man, you have to be.
Yeah,
I have to think that I'm the most interesting person in the room to be able to lead people on a story. Yeah, and that's DNA. Like
it's how it is. It's how it has to be. You want to have to be interested in what other people are, but also know that you have something interesting to give, because you can't be somebody who's self-effacing and going like, oh no, why would a person want to even tune in? They've got nothing interesting to say. I'm fucking interesting. I am interesting and I'm good at what I do. So tune into what I've got to say. I've got good stuff. Got good stuff happening over my channel.
Oh man, my skill set's rough. My skill set's rough past that.
Yeah. McGaming Owl asked, what are some major things you would change in the current D&D edition if you were given the chance to make a new edition?
I try to put as much stuff as a bonus action as possible, and I encourage a lot of people that don't want to play 5e's action economy. A lot of it's built off of you do this and then you wait a turn. If you have a large party, you need to figure out how much, as much as stuff as you can load so they have an interesting turn. I also I am really big on player agency. I don't let paralysis, hold person. I don't let them do it to my characters and shut my game down, and I don't shut their game down.
Yeah.
I'm heavy on making sure that we keep agency with like friends and charm person, so we don't get into any territory that we don't need to get into.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one for me. Like I've been with players who love the chance to attack their fellow players because they love the role play of like coming out of that at the end, realizing what you've done because you were in a blood frenzy because of the cursed axe or whatever, and you were going, oh shit, I'm so oh god, how do I fix this and something. And they love the chance of like, hey, and then there's other players who love the chance just because they're murder hobos and they're like, oh, free reign to kill the wizard. I can do that. I'm charmed, so I have to do it. And then there are other players who are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to kill my friends. Why would I want to do that? And they try and metagame their way out of it and stuff. And so you just kind of have to read the party when you're using those sorts of things and be like, I'm not going to use mind control elements on this guy because he doesn't find it interesting anymore or whatever. As for the stunning and paralysis stuff, I'm kind of going that way myself as well because I listened to a podcast about game design. Usually it's talking about board games and stuff, but I think a lot of it applies. They basically talk often, one of the things they come back to often in that podcast is miss a turn is just bad game design. in any game, even Uno, skip a turn is not a good game design because what you're saying is don't play this game. Like the mechanic you're using is you don't get to play for another round. You don't get to play yet. And if it compounds, if it's like one turn after another, it gets even worse in D&D when a round can take like 20, 30, 40 minutes.
Too much time.
It comes back to your turn and all you get to do is roll a saving throw against the stun. It's not good design. So I'm trying to...
There's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can even RP. Like, if you're going to have something that... if you're going to have some sort of stakes where it limit... For me, what I do is I take something away. I limit something. So they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
But I don't take away their agency of their turn. Like maybe a leg doesn't work, maybe the bonus action is gone, maybe I just want them to make I want the stakes of making a decision, but I don't want them not to play.
Yeah, I try and come up with something interesting. Even with death saves, you're unconscious and you're dying or whatever. I try and, like, when it's our turn, I go, give me a memory from your past. What is your life is flashing before your eyes? What is a memory from your past? Get you involved in this round, and then roll a death saving throw, and then okay, now it's somebody else's turn or whatever. And I'm even starting with that. I'm starting to think with death saves of going with a rule that I heard about. You're not unconscious during death saves. You're just dying. You've got the dying condition, which means you're conscious. You can still crawl, you can still take actions, but every action that you choose to take gives you a failed death save or whatever, so you can still help your friends out, but by doing so you're kind of dying, and that way you get this epic kind of cinematic moment of somebody dying in your arms and going and they get to have their final words as they take the help action to give you advantage on your attack against the big guy or whatever, rather than just I'm on the floor. And it also helps kind of bridge that other gap that I find cinematically unappealing in D&D, where at 1 hit point, you're fine. You can do anything you want. And at 0 hit points, you're unconscious and can't act in any way at all. And you never get that, oh god, I've been shot and I'm dying and I can crawl to the door and try and, with a bloody hand, try and whatever. So yeah, that's something I'm trying to work on, trying to remove the stunning and paralysis and unconscious conditions and try and make them still interesting for the players to use.
Yeah.
So,
and
I think
that circles back to my, trying to make things as a bonus action. I want somebody to like, I want them to love their turn. So like, wild shape and stuff like that. That it's funny because those things are all moving in that direction. I can see D&D doing more of that and trying to make more things bonuses actually, instead of having that be the action economy of how their combat
Yeah.
flows. But like, if I want you to turn into a bear and then be able to do something as a bear in that turn.
Yes, right, yeah. I'm turning into a bear, and that's all I can do. Or I'm drinking a potion to recover 5 hit points, and that's all I can do. And then you're gonna hit me for 20 anyway.
Yeah.
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 Likewise, I allow things on my in my games for like you can bonus action to try and dash, even if you've not got the rogue's dash ability. You can bonus action to like make an athletics check to see if you can push yourself a little further than you should be able to. And,
Love that. Love that.
McGaming Al, so what would that was the one we just answered. What were things you could change? Joe Baby asked, my 13-year-old's gotten into D&D from Stranger Things, which is so great. Wants to play, and we bought a lot of the starter D&D kits, but finds it really hard rule-wise. What would you recommend for getting younger players into that has easy rules and moves along at a pace to keep them engaged? Simplify the rules.
Cut those rules out.
Cut the rules. Yeah, cut the rules. Find the rules that your 13-year-old's having a problem with, cut them out. Get rid of it. Make it a single dice roll to account for everything. Make it a 50-50 dice roll. Like if you roll above a 10, you get to do it.
Simple DCs. Simple DC, and that's all that stuff is in there in the Dungeon Master Guide for you. Like it is there. Use simple DCs and cut everything out that you don't need. Like you have it there, and if it's if you need to, there's the young Jim Zub's Young Dungeon Master Guide stuff and Young Adventurer. There is a series that's a step down that maybe that's a better entry point than just the box set yet. But don't
forget as well that some Dungeon Masters, like look at Harmon Quest for instance, the Dungeon Master for that, by necessity of them having to get through an entire satisfying story in 30 minutes, he rolls everything behind his screen. He has everybody's character sheets and he rolls all of the things for them. They describe what they want to do narratively. He rolls it. You could always go not necessarily to that extreme, but if you wanted to that extreme, you can roll anything that your kid is having a hard time with. If they're not understanding a particular rule, you take it behind your GM screen and go, this is what happens. Okay, yeah, you get to succeed. Let's go ahead with the story.
Yeah,
you as the adult who does understand the rules, can take over the rules that your kid's having a hard time with.
Yeah.
The final question that came in on the redemptions, I saw a couple more coming in through the chat, but I'm going to miss them unless you actually redeem them with channel points. Fancy asked, in a soundbite that can be a short, what would you guys recommend to people to get into D&D?
I mean, we talked about that the whole time.
Talked about that the whole time. Can we summarize it into a minute long? How do you recommend getting into it in the first place?
Right now, find what is the most interesting, or what is the thing that they're most interested about right now. Are they jonesing on Cyberpunk?
Yes.
Then do that. Then follow that. Are they watching Altered Carbon or the Cyberpunk series on Netflix? Then go and take that and play in that world. There's a ton of systems for it.
Yeah.
There's ways to play D&D in it. There's third-party stuff that you can go out and get. Whatever that single person is interested in, take that setting and go find a reason to play tabletop.
Absolutely.
That's really the key. D&D is the best gateway for fantasy and high fantasy, but there's all these different
There are
styles.
100,000 different TTRPGs. Barely with exaggeration. If you guys want to be
vampires and get ridiculous, then people were playing way more Masquerade when I was growing up than D&D. All the theater kids were playing Vampire the Masquerade, and I realized once I found out Vampire Masquerade, it was the growing up simulator.
Oh yeah,
it was
yeah. It's the you're going through changes.
Totally
yeah. My ex wasn't into D&D in any way, but I was getting into it in a big way, even as a career. So I was like, I really should introduce her to what I do for a living. So she's not interested in high fantasy, so I set a game in the Good Place. And I was like, right, you're all in the Good Place, where there's like an element of fantasy kind of reality bending things that can happen, and pick a character that you like from the TV show, and we'll set it there. So there's all sorts of ways to get people into it. Find what they like and set a game in it.
Nowadays, I see what's crazy for me. It's finally shifting away from like us being all token kids to I've never read the Fellowship of the Rings, but I've read Sanderson, and I'm into that. Like, it's finally
Right, yeah.
there's so much out there. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm an old R.A. Salvatore guy. Now there's so much out there that they may have only been. No, I'm into it because Patrick Rothfuss.
Right,
And
yeah.
like there's a whole new era of fantasy that comes out from that. So it's like, yeah, hey, this is still the same. This is good stuff. All right.
All right, we got a question here from Maze Keeper that says, how do you personally feel about homebrewing? Rob does it a lot, but not everyone enjoys it, and sometimes people love doing it for, all over the game. Crazy folk like me. Is it something you like or not, and why?
I mean, I only homebrew. Like, you're gonna have to accept me as what I am for what I enjoy. And then if it's not for you, then there's a million other creators that you can find that style. I'm gonna have my own personal twerks. I am not a rules is written guy. I'm a rule of cool guy, and I love to roll dice. I share like, for me, 1s and 20s are finite. You can't change them. You can't luck them. There has to be a line in my games to where the ultimate awesome can happen or the ultimate failure, and you have to have a failure point because there's so many fail safes and everything else. That's just something that I cherish, and
and I've seen in your games as well, like your 20s, you use the rule where, like, if you 20 on a saving throw, you get no damage, like, regardless of what the rules say. Like, 20s on a save, you're completely safe from it, stuff like that.
We play a very heroic style, and if we're not, we let people know. And to be honest with you, I love playing this, and I don't do a ton of modern or cyberpunk. Not because I don't love it. I love the genre. Our day-to-day is so cyberpunk, it gets too real.
Yeah.
Like, when you're broke in an apartment and 6 corporations can choose everything to do with your life, it's raining, you're miserable, and you go, this was just yesterday.
This is my life here. This is what I'm playing in already. I play this for escapism. I don't want this.
It is. It starts to get.
I don't want to worry about capitalism and
But I love it. I love going into it. I love playing. Shadowrun is just, I love that setting so much. Don't enjoy the rules whatsoever.
I just got into Shadowrun. Just managed to play my first game of it at Gen Con live for Catalyst Games. They were like, "Hey, you want to come and play a game?"
Oh, wow!
Because I was hired as as a narrator, voice actor for one of the Shadowrun novels coming out soon, novellas. So I was very excited about the setting just from reading the book. And then they allowed me to play the setting, and I played like a beginner starter mission or whatever, and really enjoyed it. The D6s I can find is like the for the 2 hours that I was playing, I was like, hell yeah, there was like 17 D6s. Let's roll a bunch of dices, and
it's a giant combination lock that you have to look at. You're like, what'd this lock do? I get it. It works for this high espionage style. It's for me, it's not punchy enough to for storytelling online.
Right, yeah, because you go, yay, 17 D6 is a lot of fun, and now let's pause while I go, that's a 6, that's a 6, that's a 5. It does lose that punchy, like, you roll it, 20, moving on, bam.
Yeah. you lose your pacing ability, and that's what I think Daggerheart is going to have trouble with. They're doing a 2d12 system, and there's a hope and a fear dice that comes on theirs, and it's you're extrapolating the field. So now to roll a true nat 1, you got to roll 2 of them, but it's like it gets a bit much on that. Yeah. When we're trying, once we're spending now 30 seconds trying to interpret what the dice roll is.
Yes. Yeah.
You got to be so much better at all your other stuff to keep up with that.
Yeah. And I play with enough people with D&D to know how difficult simple, because you might be the designer of that game and go, oh, it's simple, you roll 2d12, add them together, and that's your thing. And it's like, no, you just said add them together in a half a second thing. It takes a lot longer for a lot of people to do that. So you roll a 7 and you roll a 7 and a 5. I know a lot. I play enough for D&D to go. There's a vast majority of people who go 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. I rolled a 12, and then I've also got a modifier. 18. And that's fine. Like, math's not everybody's strong suit, but you've got to keep that in mind when you're creating your system to be like, the more maths you're adding into it, even if it's just simple 2 single digits that you're adding together, it can be difficult for a lot of people and can really slow down pacing. All right.
We couldn't play the 2E Pathfinder system if it wasn't so supported on Foundry.
Right, yeah. Because you just click a button and it rolls it all for you.
That level of math and crunch, no way can we do as a show. Not a chance. Not a chance. It does all the crazy calculation for us. So, you're able to move on.
There's somebody I was chatting with on this series recently, Roltercast, the Australian-based TTRPG podcast. And for the podcast, I was asking them about like how they keep their combat sort of punchy, and they're like, oh, heavy editing. Like, we will play it as a normal game, and then we will edit out all of the maths and the pausing to look things up and the this and that and the other, and so it keeps the combat going. And so they roll a thing, and they're like, oh, that's a hit, bam, but that's an edit because they rolled a thing, they looked it up. What's the armor class? Yeah, okay, that's a hit, and they cut all that out. It's very clever, and it's necessary if you want to keep people engaged and interested in not getting lost in all of the numbers. All right, this will be the last question then, and then we'll wrap up. 20 Sides to a Story asks, I know a lot of GMs get into the forever GM role. Do you guys play in regular games in your time when you're not behind the screen?
That's the reason why I play as the NPC.
Yeah, I don't get to play very much. I committed myself, even though I was super busy. End of last year, Rackham from GM Workshop, he got in touch and was like, I'm going to be starting to run Dragonlance. Do you want to be a player in the game? And I initially said no to it, and then I heard about all of the other players that were going to be joining him, and I was like, I'm going to have major FOMO if I say no to this. And also, it might be the only chance I get to be a player this year. And so I said, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. And so every week I play as a wizard in his campaign. But even that's like content creation. I never get a chance to just play just for the sake of playing.
Yeah. For me, I don't have that desire because I have I'm doing what I love to do.
Yeah, if I could only do one, it'd definitely GMing. I much prefer GMing than playing.
Yeah, and I get to blend with me. I'm blending both, and I'm cheating that line. The only time that I geek out is the same way that Robert was saying, like, okay, these are a bunch of people that I want to role play with because I think they're so talented that I want to be there because of FOMO or some situation like that. Or if any of my friends ask me for a charity campaign, that's on site. Right, yeah. I will do whatever it takes. It has to be literally the only thing that can stop that is having a family event. I will always be there for my peers in that capacity, or anybody who's ever volunteered time for me. I will always go above and beyond for that. But I don't seek it out because, one, you don't have the time. It's got to be for me. It's got to be a great opportunity, super group, something to where it's like I just can't get this. It can't just be a normal. Like, I get that all the time in my hometown. Hey, let's hook up and play some D&D, and I'm like, no, not really.
No, thanks.
Yeah. I hate to tell them, it's like, hey, I don't have time, nor do I want to play mediocre D&D. I have an opportunity to get to play really amazing
stuff.
I've
played with some of the most amazing people. I don't have the time to now be playing in your game that you've kind of doing while drunk. If I turn up to your game,
sharpen stone. Like, you get better. You need to do this. What we talked about is that stagnation you get once you're on your island. The high level games, the stuff that takes you and puts you with another high level GM or incredible player base, you get better the same way that everybody else gets better at a table. So, like, you're not immune from it. Like, you definitely become a product of your environment and your storytellers. So always be branching out, be playing with people from different backgrounds, diversities, put yourself in other people's shoes. Not only do you become a better person, but you become a better storyteller.
Nice. It's good. Some good advice.
Got you a clip.
All right. There's a clip. Bam. Bam, bam. So many clips from this one. Fancy's loving it. All right. So we're all out of time, unfortunately. So let's wrap out with where people can find you. If they're from my community, this is the first time they're seeing you. where can they find your
You
stuff?
can find me at Captain RoBear at everything. I'm one of the few people that have it all. So you can go to CaptainRoBear.com, Twitch, YouTube, all of it. You can also go to Baldur's Gate and beyond and check out the stuff that we're doing for Baldur's Gate and builds and how to transition your love for that game into tabletop.
Nice, yeah. Likewise, if you're here from Captain RoBear's community or you're listening on a podcast and you found this through other means, I'm Robert Hartley, GM, Hartley. I'm again one of the lucky few that managed to get that handle on every platform there is. So at Robert Hartley GM on whatever your favorite thing is of choice. Also support me on Patreon. It's one of the best ways to actually to financially support. Thank you so much for joining me. We are ending our short rest. We got to get back to our quest now. So that means getting back to Baldur's Gate 3. I've got a lot of writing to do this weekend, so I'm exactly. So I can't.
It's going down.
I can't get it open, and I'm super jealous for now. But it's on my cards for like as soon as filming's done on Tuesday next week. I'm like, bam! I'm coming home and playing Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me. We'll leave it there. Is there anybody online on Twitch right now that you would like to raid into? I like to give that choice to my friends, my guest.
Let's see who is in.
We've got DorkTales online. Oh, Captain RoBear's live. Look.
Oh.
We've got Jenk on TV. We've got D20 Deathmatches doing reruns as well. Just a real quick question, actually. I never got the chance to ask you. How did you get to know the D20 Deathmatch people? Because they're often
we met on Mixer, and we lived in the same state, and we're right across from each other. I had no idea. They lived in Springfield, Missouri, and I lived in Cape Girardeau, and we met on Mixer. And
that's crazy.
When we started the first D&D campaign, I was like, "Hey, Mud, would your wife be interested in playing with us? Because we really need a female bad." And he's like, sure, we'll ask. And then that's when I found out that his partner is this amazing speech and debate champion and this incredible host and order. I was like, why are you streaming? I was like, your partner is amazing.
Yeah.
As we all know, Caustic Phoenix is amazing. And that's how it all started. That we did, this. We are finally, for the first time, not in a campaign together after Thursday just ended. So it's like we've been doing that since COVID. It feels so weird to not be in a game right now. I was like, we're on a breakup right now.
All right. Is there anybody online that you'd be interested in
pick anybody, because normally I am later, so I don't normally. I don't have
people on right now.
I don't know the names right now.
All right. Let's head you to. Let's go to DorkTales, and then we get a chance to raid them.
Oh, DorkTales! I know DorkTales.
Here we go then. We're raiding in from here to DorkTales. Stick around for the raid, everybody. It's good for you. It's good for me, and it's good for the person we're raiding to. So it's a win-win-win. And I will see you guys tomorrow for some Twitch tales, some Twitch details, world building stuff. See ya.
Friends, fans, and fine folk, don't forget to comment on the video for the algorithm.